started, then we'll bring him in.
Okay, hi guys. We're gonna let you all in. And I think they should all be coming in now. Let's see if we can get you all in. I believe, Chris, please make me a co-host.
Yep, your co-host now. You're
All
good.
right, great. You've got to let them all in, please.
Yep, they're in right now. They're coming
All
in.
right. Okay, wonderful. Can you guys do me a favor? That what I'd like you to do is go to the chat button, which is 2 to the left of the share button. And I'd love you to sign in and tell me where you are from. Just got to make sure you guys are in here. I hate to tell you this, Chris, but they're not in.
I see attendees 12 and everyone's allowed to chat. So they're in here.
Go.
Ah, there we go. Now they're all in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Rose is from Chicago. Nancy's from Atlanta. We've got somebody from Austin, Texas, and South Carolina. This is great. All right, guys. My name is Sarah Cooperman, and I believe we are recording. And I'm from SCW Fitness Education. I am the CEO, so I'm the person that's the annoying one who's running this webinar. And I'm really excited because I really like these people. Melissa Lane has been a presenter with us for years. She also is the author of several of our certifications. She's a professor of, it's an MED. You have a master's of education, right, Melissa?
Right, but when you don't write a thesis, it's called an education master's, even though your coursework was in exercise science.
Okay, and that means absolutely nothing to me because I know how brilliant she is. And we've got Candace Setting. Candace, I think we actually met over the pandemic, which was interesting. Yeah, I think, and that's the first time I think we had you on a webinar. So I'm just thrilled you're joining us. I haven't seen you in a while, so this is fantastic. And Nick, we've been bugging him for quite some time to get to a live mania, but we've had him on. He is a sleep coach. Nick, can you tell us just a bit about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in the industry for just over 15 years. Specifically within sleep, I have been focusing on coaching sleep, educating around sleep for about the last 8 or 9 years. I was working in I guess, more clinical setting, working in a PT clinic, so alongside many other clinicians, and started to provide sleep coaching as a separate service, which it's become a little bit more prevalent now. You see more people actually doing it, but at the time, it was definitely something that raised some eyebrows, and that people seemed to think was pretty foreign. And I was
So you've been able to really kind of, I want to say, own the field. So that was one of the reasons that we invited you to come on the webinar, because of your expertise. Candace, your expertise is?
Well, I'm an insomnia therapist. So I work with people, it's called CBTI, which I don't know if that's what he does as well, but it's cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which is about treating the lifestyle, behavioral, and cognitive causes of insomnia, as opposed to medicating insomnia, which is kind of the Western medicine approach. So I work with people on all those aspects of sleep.
So I'm going to start with you, Candace. And how does quality sleep contribute to improved physical performance and fitness?
Well, we know quality sleep impacts every aspect of our physical health, from strengthening our immune system to removing metabolic waste. Like Melissa, I know, can talk about this a lot, about reducing Alzheimer's risk as a result of that, reducing risk of heart attack, stroke, metabolic disease, all the things. But when it comes to physical performance and fitness, it impacts everything we want in physical performance and fitness, right? We want, a lot of time till physical exertion. We want stronger aerobic output. We want, higher jumping. We want more sustained muscle strength. We want, longer rates to lactic acid buildup. And when we sleep poorly, or we have, not enough sleep, we lose all of those things. And most of the research focuses on sleep less than 6 hours a night, where we see all of those things that we want in our physical performance or physical fitness, we see all of them start to diminish. So it impacts basically everything you could want out of your workout.
You know, what's interesting is according to the National Sleep Foundation, apparently 35% of adults report getting fewer than 7 hours of sleep on weeknights, which I thought was very interesting. And like you said, decreased reaction time, higher levels of, now I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, but the hunger hormone. How do you pronounce that, Candace?
Ghrelin.
Ghrelin.
Ghrelin?
Thank you,
Ghrelin.
Melissa. Okay, good. Lower levels of, all right, leptin,
Leptin.
Leptin.
which is the satiety hormone. And then we've got increased risk of obesity and diabetes if we don't get our appropriate sleep. So, well, how does this, Melissa, I'm going to jump to you. How does this affect the hunger hormones? Why does this affect, and how does this work, and how do we counter this?
You sleep at night because your body is trying to maintain homeostasis, and that's the time when your body brings everything back into equilibrium. And you actually have 25-ish or so hormones that actually play a role in your brain that say you're hungry. No, you're not. You're bored. You're eating because you're stressed. And so it's not just leptin and ghrelin, but all of these hormones actually play a role in finding those receptors in your brain that tell you to eat or not. And so when we miss those 7, 8 hours, 9 hours of sleep at night to bring back everything back into homeostasis, all our hormones are thrown out of whack. And I think we also have to look at growth hormone and testosterone. Growth hormone is made in your first big non-REM deep sleep cycle. It used to be thought that it was made in the early morning hours, but now we know that first time you hit deep sleep that in non-REM, that's when you get your first big growth hormone. And then testosterone is made in your REM. But those hormones also help us with our muscular endurance and our muscular strength. And so we need uninterrupted sleep to bring all of these things back into homeostasis, as well as our mitochondria and our other cells that undergo autophagy.
Interesting. And Nick, how can better sleep enhance our muscle function, or what have you seen happen to your clients?
Yeah, well, I think, I think Melissa and Candace did a good job to obviously speak to all of these physiological benefits and physiological processes and things that happen either when you're getting the right quality of sleep, or of course that are not happening when you don't get the quality that you need. One of the things that I always emphasize that it's always surprised me in the fitness industry that has not really been given the proper emphasis and the proper focus is if you really look at the absolute core, most foundational, simplest level of what we do in order to achieve muscle growth, in order to achieve fitness, in order to get better in physical performance, it is this providing of a stressor, providing of a stimulus that the body is forced to then adapt to, or hopefully adapt to. And that is how you make improvements in fitness. It's how you make improvements in performance. And if you're not getting the right duration, quality, and depth of sleep, you're causing a break in what is absolutely fundamental to every single fitness or performance related goal. If you're not getting the quality sleep, it's not adequate recovery, which is not allowing the process of adaptation. And so where a lot of the start for me and just seeing how prevalent this was you're seeing people doing seemingly all the right things from a fitness and nutrition perspective. They're checking those boxes, but they're hitting walls and they're not getting the results that they would think that they would in those situations. And at the heart of that, very often is they're in this recovery debt or this sleep debt, and it is not allowing them to adapt.
Jump in here and ask
Yeah.
you something, because I think I had asked this to someone before. I find it very interesting. We've got to get this uninterrupted 7, 8 hours of sleep. And Candace, I'm going to jump on, ask you about this. What about naps? Like, can I make it up a little bit if I take a good nap? And don't smile like that.
I was gonna say, I'm happy to tackle that one too. Yeah,
All right, well, I'm going to Candace.
go for it.
So this is on always my frequently asked questions list because everybody wants to know about this. And I always tell people that naps are wonderful. Naps have a lot of health benefits. Naps can reduce fatigue. Naps can increase relaxation, all of these things. But there has to be some criteria around them and how you're using them. They're not made to make up for nighttime sleep. What's happening at night is happening over a prolonged period of time, an extensive period of time. Naps can give you a little bit of energy, a little bit of reprieve, a little bit of calm, but they also have to meet certain criteria. And the criteria I usually give people is one, that they're short and sweet, because you want to stay in certain, the early stages of sleep as opposed to getting into deep sleep in a nap, because then it becomes much harder to pull yourself out and function. And what happens is people take too long a nap, they wake up, they're groggy, they turn to caffeine, and then they create sort of the same problem for themselves. So a 15-20 minute nap, the quote unquote power nap, is a great way to kind of recharge, reset, refocus, reduce fatigue, and get through your day. Also, naps need to be early in the day, or they're going to impair your sleep that night, and you're just going to reinforce the problem. So the goal always is to have good quality sleep at night when you really need it, when your body gets the most benefit from it, and to maybe use naps as little aids early in the day to kind of get through the day, but not to make up for poor sleep over and over again.
That makes sense. I don't like you very much, but it makes perfect sense.
That's why I was smiling.
But
yeah.
I do agree. I'm like, if I take a deep nap, it's like waking up. I feel like I'm in a different universe. What are common habits that negatively affect sleep quality? Like, Melissa, how do I make sure that I get a good night's sleep? What are the things to avoid? And I know what you're going to say right away.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump really quick into just nap just for a second. I think it's important that we talk about why people feel sleepy. And that all has to do with the receptors in your brain and a compound called adenosine. And as you wake up in the morning and you start exercising and you mentally do things, your body produces adenosine. And adenosine will click into the receptors. And when all your receptors are full, you start to feel sleepy. So what do we do in America? We get up and we have caffeine. Caffeine blocks our adenosine receptors. So then when caffeine's half-life is over and starts to fall away from the receptors, all the adenosine that is floating through our body now hooks onto those empty receptors, and that's why we get sleepy. And so that's why we need that nap. So obviously we want to stay away from caffeine later in the day. And there is a little hack that if you want to know, I'll tell you about early morning caffeine. And before we go to bed, we want to stay away from alcohol, because even though alcohol is a depressant, it ruins our cycles. It doesn't let us go through non-REM stages 1, 2, 3, and 4. It keeps us out of REM, which is your brain laying down its memories and all the other things. So alcohol, social media. Some people have a problem with exercising late at night. Some people have a problem with eating late at night. We want to make sure the room is cool, and we want to make sure we have come down off of our blue-green, any bright light.
And why does the room have to be cold?
Because for you to actually go through your cycles of sleep, your body temperature and your heart rate need to drop a certain amount. And don't quote me on this, but I think for your body temperature, it's 2 degrees from your normal average body temperature.
Okay. And Nick, what are your thoughts about common habits that will positively affect our sleep?
Yeah, so one of the things I always emphasize, and that I think is underappreciated, we talk a lot about sleep hygiene, and people talk about sleep lists and certain hacks, and all of those things are beneficial. But where I find that people get the greatest benefit, and those things trickle into the lifestyle and environment and everything else, is improving your relationship with sleep, improving the relationship that you have with sleep. And what I mean by that is really the mindset and perceptions and outlook that you have on your sleep and on your sleep situations. And if you find yourself, regardless of if you've been struggling with sleep maybe for a short period of time or even a longer period of time, it's very likely that you've developed some negative perceptions about your sleep and some negative perceptions about who you are, your sleep identity, as we'll sometimes call it. I'm just destined to be a poor sleeper. This is just who I am. I've always struggled with sleep. This happens to me as I age. This happens to me when this situation occurs. And incredibly important and incredibly foundational is to actually sit with those things and actually challenge those thoughts and those perceptions and try and work them into more positive. We call it putting these thoughts on trial, because so often these things that we believe, they're just not based in any real merit. There's no research to back them. And I always emphasize to people too, even if you've been struggling with sleep for 30 years, it's never too late to rewrite your sleep story. I mean, every single night gives you a new and fresh opportunity. And what that also allows is it removes this baggage that people sometimes carry with them of previous nights of poor sleep. There's a lot of sayings that unfortunately get perpetuated out there of you can't pay back your sleep debt, you can't pay back the sleep bank, any number of these things that are just stupid to say because they serve no benefit. And what it really creates for people is the belief that any previous nights of poor sleep, they have to carry with them into the future. Of course,
Yeah.
you can't go back in time and get those nights of sleep again, but it does you no benefit to focus on those things as opposed to focusing on looking ahead to the future. And
Yeah, I
so
like that. I like that you said you can you can rewrite your own script. I'm real quickly gonna play a little video here. Is it playing? Okay, I just wanted to make sure we got that in. That's so interesting. I like that the awareness that people need to be able to rewrite their script. Candace, I saw you nodding. Can you please contribute to that?
Well, I mean, what we do in cognitive behavioral psychology is very similar to what Nick was describing, with just kind of different names and approaches. But in cognitive behavioral psychology, we call them negative sleep thoughts. And some of these things that Nick was referring to, where somebody has a couple nights in a row of bad sleep, and they go to bed and they say, "Oh, I'm going to sleep terribly tonight. I never sleep well. My day is going to be ruined tomorrow. I'm screwed. Everything's terrible." And what they're doing is actually writing their script. They're deciding they're not going to sleep well that night. They're deciding they're going to feel terrible in the morning. They're creating that for themselves. And so part of that process of change is identifying those negative sleep thoughts and replacing them with positive ones. Like, even if I had a terrible night's sleep last night, there's a good chance I can sleep well tonight. Even if I only get a few hours sleep tonight, I can still have a good day tomorrow, right? All of these things that change our mentality, which ultimately change our actions. And so much of it is rooted in how we think about our sleep as opposed to our actual sleep. So I full on agree with everything Nick said about that framework and changing your relationship with sleep.
And I like, I keep hearing you guys are talking about hormonal balances, and you're talking about mental focus and emotional well-being. Melissa, I know I feel like you're the queen of hormones here. So you've got to contribute to this and share, how do we get ourselves back into balance? How is this going to enhance our mental focus and help balance our hormones? And what about different stages of our lives?
So as we get older and our hormones start to change, especially as a female, we have to sit down and look that estrogen is what controls our osteocytes, and our osteocytes control our osteoblast and our osteoclast and the remodeling of bone. But we also know that during sleep, there are changes in the formation of our bone. It's everything else returning to homeostasis. So sleep even becomes more important for the aging female post-menopause as things aren't ebbing and flowing every month like they used to. So sleep becomes more important. But you also have to look that this is the time, average age of menopause in the United States is 51. This is also the time when our children are now what, 25? So they're doing crazy crap. So maybe they keep us up at night. And now our parents are 75. So now my mom is trying to mow the grass on her own with a bad hip. So she's doing crazy stuff. So all these things are going through our minds, and to make us drowsy, and I know you don't want to hear this, what do we tend to do? Medicate ourselves with alcohol, which is by far the worst thing you can do because it interrupts our cycle, which interrupts our growth hormones. So we're not building as much muscle. It interrupts our testosterone. We're not building as much muscle. If we're not building as much muscle, yes, the amount of calories that it takes to keep a muscle alive is like less than 10 calories per pound of muscle. But when you're exercising, more muscle makes you burn more calories. So that's the big bam for having more muscle, but that's not going to happen if our testosterone and our growth hormone are thrown off. So we could go on forever talking about hormones, but it's so important, like both Candace and Nick have said, that we go to sleep at night and do the right things and say, I am a good sleeper. I'm going to have a good night's sleep tonight. I'm going to go through my nightly routine. I'm going to put on my skincare. I'm going to write in my journal. I'm going to stay off of my phone, and I'm going to let my body do what it needs to do. There's mental things you have to do, physical things you have to do, and emotional things you have to do.
And I know when we had a webinar during the pandemic, Melissa, you said, if you're going to try to go to sleep at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, if you're going to have a glass of wine, you don't have it after 6 p.m. I know you don't believe in drinking at all, but
you become a day drinker.
is that what I am?
No, not you become a day drinker. But yes, the closer you drink to going to bed, the more it's going to disrupt your sleep, depending on how much you drink. Remember, it takes an hour for the average person to metabolize 1.5 ounce of alcohol.
Interesting. Okay. That's interesting. And Nick, what type of positive behavioral habits would you recommend for people to get that quality of sleep?
Yeah, so I think behaviorally, it's expanding on the same things we were talking about earlier of improving your relationship with sleep. And I like the way Melissa framed it as in terms of what you need to do. There are things that you need to do physically, there are things that you need to do emotionally, there are things that you need to do even sometimes spiritually. It's really about part of improving your relationship with sleep is how you set yourself up for success. And I think of this as the state of mind that you are, the state of being that you are physically, and also really just how you establish everything surrounding sleep as a positive association, as much of a positive association as possible. So your physical bed, your bedroom, your bedtime, the routines attached, those all need to be set up as positive things. They don't need to be extensive. They don't need to be this laundry list of habits that you need to check, or, oh, I have to do all these crazy activities to help me wind down. But there has to be something that you're willing and able to do and committing to doing that is going to check those boxes, that is going to, at the very least, put you in the right frame of mind. Sometimes that includes things like a brain dump. We know that when our head hits the pillow, thoughts are racing, and having a dedicated, it's sometimes called constructive worry. Allow yourself the opportunity to really deal with the problems, to-dos, and worries that you have, separate from your bed and separate from your bedtime. And that creates this ability to, even if you do have racing thoughts, it allows the ability to deflect. It allows you to deflect those things. You can write them down on paper. You can deal with them the following day. And it's all about, again, in this idea of your relationship with sleep, it's preserving as positive an association for your physical bedroom, your physical bed, your bedtime routine. And it doesn't have to be extensive, but the more that you preserve those things, the better. And I will even go to the point, and sometimes this is maybe more controversial because I know we're even going to talk about sleep duration and how important sleep duration is. And it absolutely is. It's backed in every facet of research, and we know sleep duration is important. But I find that very often people place a lot of pressure and emphasis on the sleep duration that causes the sacrifice of some of these other things that we're talking about here. For example, I often give an example of someone going out for dinner with some friends and getting home at, say, 10 o'clock. And it was a vibrant social environment and they were excited. It was great to see them, all of these things. And they need to be up at 6 a.m. the next day. So part of the common intuition is, okay, well, 8 hours, let's check that box. Let me let's shorten my routine. Let me get in bed and try to make sure I get to sleep, when they're not physiologically and mentally ready for sleep. And what that ultimately creates is, number one, you're not actually likely to get that 8 hours anyway. But now you're creating this different association because you're very likely to be now spending time lying there or spending time getting ready where you're not actually sleeping and where you're not quite ready for sleep. And so I always, again, think of it from the perspective of how can you maintain these healthier associations and healthier relationships.
Even when the situation has changed, like, and Candace, you work a lot with people who have insomnia.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you encourage them, help them do the routine? And, as a fitness professional, as a personal trainer, we get to know these intimate details of our clients. Like, frankly, half the time I don't want to hear it, right? But we can really make a positive effect without holding being a lawyer, without holding myself out as like an exercise physiologist or a sleep coach per se. But what are some of the things we can recommend to our clients? And what are some of the things you've done to help people that have insomnia deal with this?
Well, one of the things that Nick was talking about was, liking these things, right? Feeling positive about these things, having positive associations. And that's something really powerful to play with. I mean, an example I use all the time with people is that I think everybody should love their bed. And I mean, love everything about it. Love the color of it, love the blanket, love the material, love their pillows. Just be thrilled to crawl into bed at night because they love everything about it. But tied to that is, again, going back to this idea that Nick was talking about associations. Your brain makes a lot of associations and it adapts accordingly. So if you're using your bed as your office, as your movie room, as your hangout space, now your brain is associating your bed with all of these things that require you to be awake and your brain to be active and your brain to be working. So I tell people all the time, your bed should be used for sleep and sex only. And everything else you should be doing elsewhere. So now you have this bed that you associate with sleep and you love it. So you're super excited at the end of the night to crawl into your bed and just get all cozy and go to sleep because that's what you associate with being in your bed. So for all of the things that are necessary, right? When we talk about sleep hygiene, when we talk about bedroom temperature, when we talk about sun exposure, all of the things involved in sleep, you want to make it stuff that people love, stuff that people enjoy, right? None of these things should feel like a chore or should feel painful, because nobody's ever going to stick with that.
No, that's great. That's great.
Sarah, can I say something?
Yes, yes, please.
In exercise physiology, there's something called the anticipatory response. And for people who exercise on a regular basis, it's been proven that when we get up and put our workout clothes on and tie our shoes and put our hair in a ponytail, that our heart rate automatically starts to go up, and we switch from the parasympathetic nervous system to the sympathetic nervous system as being the dominant part of the autonomic nervous system. Well, there's some research being done now that shows that there might actually be an anticipatory response to change the sympathetic nervous system at night into the parasympathetic nervous system being dominant if we set up regular habits and if we keep a regular, semi-regular bedtime, so that if we always go to sleep or go to bed between 9 and 10, if we always wash our face, and if we have a little set schedule, just like we put on our clothes to go to the gym, if we do the same thing every night, the anticipatory response might actually work in reverse. How cool is that?
It's very cool. Nick, have you read things like this or
Yeah,
experienced this?
I absolutely have, and anecdotally working with so many people, it makes so much sense. And what I also love about that way of thinking for people is it allows more of this mindset of, I don't want to say letting go per se, but there's an element of letting go and letting your body do what it's naturally designed to do. And there's often this performance anxiety that can sometimes exist for people, not quite the same, type of performance anxiety in sport competition necessarily, but this anticipation and anxiety that builds because they treat sleep as though it's a performance and something that they need to excel in. And all right, tonight's the night. Now I'm going to lock in. Like tonight's the night I'm going to do this, this, and this for the routine, versus having a few things that you're able to do that create a natural association habitually that just you don't have to even consciously think about. And it allows you to reduce some of that performance type of mentality, because I always emphasize, we talk about health in these three pillars of sleep, nutrition, and fitness. Sleep differs from nutrition and fitness in a lot of ways, but one of them, and one of the big ones, is when we talk about success, there's no willpower involved here. You can will yourself from a fitness perspective to push through, to make the decision to go to the gym, to make the decision for that next workout. And there's a level of willpower that often exists in certain facets of nutrition. You're not getting into bed and physically willing yourself to sleep. That is not a successful approach. It's not a successful formula, and it likely is going to create a lot of negative associations long term. It's more about creating the environment and creating the mindset that allows for more of this to just naturally occur on its own. It's more of a surrendering of that will.
Now, I think this is kind of interesting. I always wondered why my teenage boys, oh my gosh, they could sleep for 12 hours. They could, and then take a nap in the afternoon. And I know all my kids were very athletic. I mean, all of them took their sports a little too seriously, like my whole family takes everything too seriously. But what is that about? I mean, is that Candace, is that kind of hormone related, or is it just
It's usually growth related.
What'd
Yeah.
you say?
I said it's usually growth related, which is in turn hormone related. But whenever we go through periods of growth, we need a lot more sleep. And it's why as we age, particularly as we, go into our kind of senior years, we need less sleep. Our sleep needs vary throughout our whole life cycle, depending upon our lifestyle, of course, but also a lot of things that are happening physiologically, biologically. And so you see that more sleep needs in time where there's more physical growth going on. So that's not uncommon at all.
Yeah,
And
and then
so-
if you add in the athletic side of it as well,
Oh, yeah, for
there's
sure.
always a meeting of the recovery demand. So when you look at and you see research and you see professional athletes or athletes at any level tout how much they sleep, it's not that every person necessarily needs that, but there is a level of increased recovery demand when it comes to putting your body through certain levels of athletic performance. I think those two things together, it makes sense that they would.
Yeah, and Melissa, what happens as we age and we're not growing, or sadly, some of us feel like we are still growing, just not in the ways we want to. But we have a deprivation of the growth hormones. For me, at least, I find that I've got to get that exercise in.
Okay,
it-
so let's kind of go back and start with the athleticism and the growing.
Yeah.
So all of those things trigger oxidative stress in the body. And whenever you have oxidative stress in your body, you create free radicals. Whenever you have free radicals, you have to clear your free radicals, and that is done a lot while you sleep. But oxidative stress also triggers cellular autophagy, which is where your cells recycle the waste products and clean themselves out. And you hear a bunch of different definitions about it. So when your boys were young, they not only were growing and creating oxidative stress, but they were creating oxidative stress from their exercise. Well, as we get older, we know that even if we're in the fitness business, we don't tend to move as much or as hard. Things start to hurt, joints get replaced. We turn to less oxidative stress activities. So we don't need as much sleep for cellular autophagy. But here's the kicker. Sleep deprivation also increases oxidative stress, which means I am now going to throw my autophagy out of homeostasis. Our hormones are changing. We're not going to sleep as well. We tend to start thinking about end of life things at night. We don't get as comfortable because things hurt. So all those things together also make sleep that much more important.
Okay, interesting. I love that. So we practical strategies. I'm just going to review this just a little bit. The practical strategy set up I love systems. I feel like that's the way I run my professional career and my personal life. I like to know I'm going to be able to do the same things. I'm going to, like Candace recommended, I'm going to make the bedroom is going to be this wonderful, sexy sleep environment. There we go. In that order, not sleep and sex, sex and sleep. And I'm going to try to make sure that I give myself enough time to do that. And like Nick recommended, not stress out about needing the sleep. What do you guys think about, and I'm just throwing this out there, what do you think about sound machines? Candace, do you recommend that for some of your clients?
I do, yeah. I think that they can be great, but it depends on your sleep environment. It also depends on the individual. If your sleep environment is perfectly silent and there's no intermittent disruptive noise in it, there's no animals floating around, there's no outside street noise, there's not somebody who wakes up 3 hours before you and makes noise in your bedroom, then and you're fine, then you don't need it. But what noise machines do, you know, whether it's white noise, brown noise, pink noise, all of these different color noises, they help your brain filter that stuff out so it's not as impacted by it. If it is dead silent and there's noise, even the lightest noise, you're probably going to respond to it. But if it's filtered out by a noise machine making steady noise, not a TV, which is intermittent noise, but steady noise, then your brain is less likely to respond to that and you're more likely to stay in whatever stage of sleep you're in. So yeah, I think that they can be great. I sleep with them.
Okay.
Sarah, can I say something?
Yes.
So Candace brought up the point about animals sleeping with you. There is actually some research done that shows if you have, say, another person in bed with you and a couple of animals on the floor, that as the CO2 from the expired breath increases during the night, that you're actually more likely to wake up in the middle of the night and not have interrupted sleep. So they always suggest that if you have extra hearts beating in your room and extra things breathing in your room, that you crack a window so the CO2 can actually disperse outside and you will sleep more consistently through the night.
That's interesting.
Isn't that? You know how I know that.
You have 9,000 pets in your house. And I've just got one huge pet that just breathes and snores, and oh my gosh, 40 years of this. Yeah, yeah. It was very funny. I went to see, you know, I go to the Mayo Clinic and I do that executive checkup thing. And we were talking about sleep, and I just kind of said, well, my husband, oh my God, he always snores. So I do the earplugs and I have a sound machine. And the physician looked at me and goes, just have him sleep in another room. And I'm like looking at him like, oh yeah, that's going to happen. I know I'm going to be the one in the other room with the dog. So that is not something that I definitely decide to do. All right, I'm going to show another video, you guys. We have Atlanta Mania coming up. July 24th through 26th. And then we also have Atlanta, Dallas Mania that's coming up in August. And we're just about to launch Midwest Mania, which is in the beginning of October. Our website should go up, believe it or not. I think it may even go up tomorrow. And I also want to thank Chris McGinnis for helping getting us going here. That was great. So I'm going to share just a little video now, and hopefully this is working a little bit. Here we go. Oh, that's very exciting. We also, for any of you that are from California, I don't see anybody on here from California. I do see the Tennessees, the South Carolina. I know you guys are going to be coming to Atlanta Mania, but we are doing a San Diego Mania with the Athletic Business Show this year, which is November 6th through 8th at the Convention Center. So we're really excited to be working with them. And I want to thank you guys so much for joining me. And I want you to each go one by one. I'm going to start with you, Candace, and then go to you next. So Melissa gets a little more time to think here. Yeah. But what would be your most important key that you recommend for people to do to for as a sleep solution? Candace?
I mean, we've talked about a lot of things, and sleep consistency, sleep schedule consistency, I think is critical, because as much as people hate to hear this, even sleeping in on the weekends kind of sets you up for a really rough start to the week, because Melissa mentioned adenosine, and you know how that kind of builds up over the course of the day. And if we try and go to sleep without that same level of buildup, we struggle with it. And we see this all the time on Sunday night. You know, somebody's gone out and done a whole bunch of things on the weekend. They stayed up late Saturday night, they slept in Sunday, and then they're trying to go to bed on Sunday night at their normal work week sleep time, and they can't. They're tossing and turning, they're struggling with it. And several things happen as a result of that. One, they start to develop all these negative sleep thoughts and all of these poor cognitions about their sleep and their sleep capability. And two, they have all this association of time in their bed awake. And we've already talked a lot about association and how your brain does that. So the more you can control your sleep schedule and limit kind of these lapses, even on the weekends, the more consistent you can be, the better you'll feel, the better you'll sleep.
Great. And Nick?
Yeah, I'll reemphasize a bit of the point earlier of really looking at it as a relationship with sleep, because if you really look at it in that way and you treat it as a relationship and you treat it as something you try to maintain as much positivity towards and as much of that type of approach, it's ultimately going to set you up a lot more for, number one, creating these more easily accessible routines and habits and things that you can do that allow you to sleep more naturally, allow you to get the right quality. It's also going to build in to not allow you to overreact to what is inevitable, which are going to be poor nights of sleep. You are going to get poor nights of sleep, even if you have absolutely everything dialed in perfectly. It happens to every human being. And what will very often happen is you can have someone sleeping really well for a period of time, and then inevitably something happens. They get sick, they're traveling, it's an increased period of stress. These things that happen to every single human being, and not allowing those maybe more acute things to turn into more chronic based sleep issues where it's fundamentally changing how you believe, how you think about sleep. It's like, again, if we're thinking about this as a relationship, if you have a great relationship with the core values of that relationship in place and how you feel about that other person, one incident of something happening is not going to change that. And similarly, if you think about this from a sleep perspective, and so really looking at what the relationship that you have with sleep is and trying to continue to maintain that as much as possible.
Okay, and Melissa?
Get 10 minutes of bright sunlight first thing in the morning to set your circadian rhythm. It's proven in research over and over and over again.
Okay, all right. Wake up to the sunshine. All right, thank you all for joining us. We will be doing this next month in July, and we're very excited. We're going to be filming live, doing this webinar live at Atlanta Mania. So we're pretty excited. We're going to be talking about mobility. So we'll see you next month. Thank you so much for joining us, and everybody take care. And it's almost the weekend. So thanks. Thank you for joining us.